Hey, what's up, everyone, and welcome back to episode 2 of Summer Stories with Zoe on the Accidentally Intentional podcast. And today I am really excited to share a story with you about my experiences growing up with who has become probably one of the most influential people in my life, and his name is James Guy. So let's begin. So before I was even born, James Guy became a best friend to my father. James was the type of person who would light up the room with his smile and just wanted to make sure everyone around him felt extremely loved. In fact, one time he went on a missions trip to Africa, and then years later, the people that he met in Africa decided to name a building after James because that's how much he impacted other people's lives just by being a bundle of joy and intentional with every single person that he encountered. Now, the story begins for me before I was even born because when my parents found out they were pregnant with me, they hadn't even known the gender yet, and they told James, and they said, "James, guess what? We're pregnant," to which James immediately replied, "It's gonna be a girl, and she's gonna change the world." And wouldn't you know that months later, I show up. Now, growing up, James and I had this certain, it felt like a magical electricity between us. Like crazy things would always happen. Crazy, awesome things would always happen when we were together. For instance, one time we were at Kennywood, which for those not in Pittsburgh, that's a local amusement park here. And James gave me $1. I had to be under 10 at this point. He gave me $1 to play Blockbuster game, where I had to throw a beanbag and knock all 3 blocks off, and only if I did that would I win a prize. Would you believe on the first throw, I knock all the blocks off and I walk away with a stuffed animal that is literally larger than me at that point. And then there was another time where we were at Dave & Buster's and James was watching me play the claw machine. And all of a sudden, because James is watching, I suddenly pull a gold watch out of the claw machine. It was stuff like that. There would just be this certain energy, this electricity, and these magical moments that would happen when James and I were together. So it felt like this really special bond that we shared. Now, fast forward to age 15, and here enters the piece that changes my life forever. Because James and I shared really close birthdays with one another, date-wise. So they were both in November, and there was a Steeler game on, so my parents decided, hey, let's have a Steeler party. Let's invite James and his family. Shout out to his wife, Robin, and his daughter, Brian, who are some of my favorite people ever. And so we all came together for the Steeler birthday party for James and Zoe. So fun. But during halftime, James actually pulled me aside and pulled me upstairs, and I was 15 at the time, and he said, "Hey, I want to talk to you about something." And I was like, okay. I had no idea what he was about to say. And he pulls out his wallet, and he just sits there with the wallet in his hands and starts to tell me the story. And he said, at age 4, you had just learned to write your name. And you had learned to write your name, and you actually gave this piece of paper to your mom that had your name on it and said, "Mom, make sure you give this to James." Now, the backstory there is James was also a patient of my parents, who are both chiropractors, so James was coming to the office frequently to get treated. And so my mom, as I asked, made sure to give that piece of paper to James. And it simply just said my name on it. And as James is telling me this story, he starts shuffling through his wallet. And he said, that was a moment that profoundly hit me because you, Zoe, at 4 years old, were sharing the love of Jesus with me, just wanting to remind me that someone was there and someone cared for me. And then James pulls out of his wallet that exact piece of paper that I had given him at 4 years old. And he had said, "Zoe, for the past 11 years, I have taken this out of my wallet every night and prayed for you," because I was just so touched by that gesture. And I then began to cry like I am now because I couldn't believe this. I couldn't believe that for the past 11 years of my life, somebody was praying for me consistently because I gave him a piece of paper with my name on it. James then proceeded to say this to me, and he said, "Zoe, I want you to know that the enemy will come against you, but stay strong because God is on your side and he will fight on your behalf." Now, I had no idea to what context he was speaking about in that moment. But if you just listen to episode 1, I share about my bullying experience in high school, which ended up being exactly 1 year later after this conversation with James. So it was pretty profound that he had shared that with me. And I just remember being rocked by the statement James had made. I mean, still 14 years later, and I remember that exact phrase: the enemy will try and come against you, but stay strong because the Lord is on your side and he will fight for you. So I couldn't believe what I was hearing James share and show me, and it really moved me because I was like, wow, imagine where I would be the past 11 years of my life if somebody hadn't been praying for me every single day. Now, 2 weeks after that conversation, James died of a heart attack. And I couldn't get over how kind God was to give me that final conversation with James and let him just encourage me and equip me with armor that would serve me down the road a year later. And having felt such a close bond to James, I obviously was massively grieving whenever he passed away. And I also had the honor of giving one of the eulogies at his funeral. And I kind of want to share a little bit about his funeral because that is also a moment I'll never forget, because I am pretty sure that there were over 300 people at his funeral, and I've never seen anything like it. It was a celebration of life. It was a celebration of someone who would step into every room and make the effort to make sure everyone had a smile on their face and knew how loved they were. While I was giving the eulogy, I remember breaking down during it, and everyone was so kind, just being patient with me as I finished giving my remarks. And I remember as I was walking down the steps, coming off the stage, my own dad running up to me and just holding me and giving me this huge hug. And I want to pause right there because I think this is an important thing to speak about, because I remember hugging my dad and two things went through my mind. First, I felt guilty for hugging my dad when one of my friends had just lost their own. But two, I also realized in that moment, this is an astoundingly beautiful picture of Jesus, because he always comes running towards us, because he is not only a good father, he is the perfect father, the one that never leaves our side and the one that loves us no matter what. And I say today that I think James was one of the most impactful people in my life, because just watching him live his life was a reflection of Jesus and the Father's love for us. And as I share this story, the verse comes to mind that says, "Do not despise the small beginnings, because the Lord loves to see the work begin," which may seem a little bit random, but never in a million years did I think that writing my name on a piece of paper and making the effort to have someone else give it to my friend James would end up changing his life and changing my life as well. And it has challenged me ever since that moment to live every single day with such intentionality and look people in the eyes and show them that you care, and show them and do the best that you can to prove that they in fact are loved, even if they can't see it or feel it for themselves. Because who knows what God will end up doing with such a small interaction like that. And I want to address people that maybe have watched this and now they're immediately thinking of someone who they have lost and they're grieving that. Again, grieving is okay, and grieving doesn't need to have an expiration date. And what I can tell you is that God's love will cover it all. It will get better. Your strength will be renewed and regained. And I'm just so grateful to have so many pictures of Jesus in my life, such as James and who he was to me. And just that person to remind me of when you do things together with God, awesome things happen. And I feel like God really blessed my friendship with James, and it makes me want to be that person that pours into others just as much, so that God will bless that as well. So I'm obviously very emotional this episode, but know that God is in this. God loves you. God is the greatest father ever, because he created fatherhood. He was the first father, and I'm so grateful for that kind of love that never ends, is completely unconditional. No matter what I do, no matter how far I try and run away from him, he is still running towards us to embrace us, even in our brokenness, even in our hurt, even in our pain. He will not leave. So I just wanted to share this story because James is such a central figure in my life. And he actually passed away at age 57. So all through high school, my number became 57 as an homage to him. Not Heinz ketchup, though. But hey, guys, I hope this story encouraged you. And I hope that it's a call to action for all of us to live a life that seeks to love everyone around us all the time, no matter what. Even if it's the smallest gesture, even if it's a smile, even if it's a wave, even if it is just going up to someone in a line and saying, hey, how are you really doing? And cutting through the white noise, cutting through the facade, and actually getting to the root of people's hearts and souls. Let's do this. Let's all be people who will leave a mark on history. That's it. That's all I have. I love you guys so much. We'll talk next week.